My name is Cheryl Shepard, and it is my pleasure to represent the League as we bring you this evening's event. We would like to thank the Cummings Foundation for generously supporting this forum, the Jenks Center for allowing us to use this wonderful space, and WinCam for broadcasting this debate to the public over local cable TV channels and streaming it on the WinCam website. The recording will be available later on the WinCam website and on WinCam's YouTube channel. So the League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization with a mission to promote informed participation by all eligible voters and public understanding of major policy issues. We do not support or oppose any candidates or political parties. We do study and take positions about major policy issues. Our policy positions and activities are organized at the national, state, and local levels and can be reviewed on the respective websites. If this forum and our mission meet your needs or even inspire you, we do encourage you to donate or become a member. All people may join, and student membership is free. This year, there are contested seats on the Select Board and on School Committee. All candidates who are debating this week, the candidates who are running unopposed, and many of the candidates for town meeting have generously provided the League with information about themselves and about their candidacies. You may find these candidate profiles on our website at lwvwinchester.org/vote. So thank you, candidates, for submitting your profiles to the League, and thanks to those of you who are here giving some of your time to meet with our voters and before and after the debates. This evening's debate will be moderated by Margaret Covey. Margaret is a trained League moderator and a member of the League of Women Voters of Lexington.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Tonight, the candidates running for school committee who are seated on the stage are Karen Mariama Bolognesi, an incumbent, Stephanie Minyarji, and Christian Nixon, an incumbent. Two of these candidates will be elected to 3-year terms on the school committee. The rules for the debate are as follows. Each candidate will have up to 90 seconds for an opening statement. The order of speaking was determined ahead of time by a random method. After that, I'll ask the candidates a series of prepared questions in rotating order. Each candidate will have up to 90 seconds for each answer. After each set of answers, the candidates may request a rebuttal. Should any candidate choose to rebut, each candidate will have up to 30 seconds to do so. Personal references about other candidates are out of order. After our final question, each candidate will have up to 60 seconds for a closing statement. The closing statements will be given in reverse order from the opening statements. Our timekeepers are seated in the first row. They will hold up a yellow placard when the speaker has 30 seconds left. Could you just do that so people see what it looks like? Thank you. And a red placard when their time is finished. Thank you. Okay, we will now start with the opening statements in the 90 seconds each. Order of presentation, Christian Nixon, Karen Mariama Bolognesi, and Stephanie Minyarji. Mr. Nixon.
Thank you, Margaret. Is this close enough? Everybody hear me okay? So for those who don't know me, hi, I'm Chris. I'm a 26-year Winchester resident. I'm a transplanted Texan, and I am a Winchester Public Schools parent of 20 years continuously, and I have a few more left to go. I am a hockey and crew parent of 2 fantastic girls. My youngest is a freshman at Winchester High School. My older daughter is a sophomore at the University of California at Berkeley. My adult son actually graduated from Winchester High School in 2019 and subsequently Massachusetts Maritime Academy. I'm in a medical marriage to a physician who's very passionate about her work. She was on the front lines of COVID during that battle, and she was as excited as I was about moving to Winchester back in 1999. I would say my perspective as a parent of 3 kids who've grown up in this district, including the Lynch Preschool, helps me understand our students' pre-K through 12 growth over a period of time when our district has seen tremendous change in leadership, organizational structure, and instructional strategies. But it's my experience on the school committee and many other town boards and committees that affords me a unique appreciation for how Winchester works and how it doesn't. I have a hunger for achieving big goals as a district with a corresponding understanding for how the railroad should run. Understanding basic duties and decisions and lanes of the school committee are an essential element to high-functioning government. A similar understanding of the workings of other Winchester public bodies means a better chance at collaboration and success on major shared initiatives, investment, and change. I'm really looking forward to the questions.
Thank you. Ms. Bolognesi.
Thank you to the League of Women Voters and all who are listening or participating. I'm Karen Bolognesi, two-term member and the current chair of the school committee. I have 3 children, including a recent graduate, and 2 who are in the Winchester schools. I'm very excited for the possibilities that are before us. I listen to the community and work with leaders in town and the state to build trust and talk about our education needs. I'll continue to expand these conversations as we, as a town, plan for a possible override. I believe in opportunity for all. Every child brings different needs and skills in academics, athletics, arts, or special education, and we must foster their passions and mental health. As for long-term planning, I've helped lead each of the milestones of the Lynch School, which will reopen on schedule and within budget this fall. It's the first net zero building in town, saving money for years to come. I'll bring this experience and relationships with state decision makers to planning for a Morocco school with the goal of sharing the costs and reducing our tax impact. Finally, I've advocated for Winchester 2030, our 5-year strategic plan for investing in staffing and improvements in literacy, math, Mandarin, and theater. We'll keep Winchester a strong education leader in the state. To learn more about me, please see winchesterforkaren.com. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Minyarji.
Thank you, Madam Moderator, and the League of Women Voters for bringing us together. And thank you to members of the school committee. I greatly appreciate your hard work. And good luck to our boys hockey team in the playoffs this evening. My name is Stephanie Minyarji. I am a town meeting member, a London School for Economics trained economist with experience consulting for large institutions such as Freddie Mac and GE Capital. However, there is no greater honor than being called the PTO mom. With a 1st and 4th grader at Ambrose, I bring a voice from our public elementary schools and as a leader in key issues facing the entire pre-K to 12 system. Issues such as literacy reform, smartphones in the classroom, the budget, a new Morocco, and transparency. If there's one thing you'll remember about me this evening, I hope that I'm proactive, analytical, and a collaborative community leader with a track record that shows I get things done. As president of Ambrose PTO in response to literacy needs, I developed a free reading assistance program. Serving on the literacy study team, I helped produce the report that is now the roadmap for literacy reform. Collaborating with central office, I negotiated a fair market overtime pay for teachers when they partner with parent associations, essentially raising pay for our teachers without spending a dime of taxpayer money. I also bring another perspective to the table. Growing up, I attended a Title I elementary school and took ESL services. That's English as a second language. My family spoke Arabic at home, and it is that experience that drives my commitment to having making every student, regardless of background or ability, to give them the tools to succeed. Let's get to work.
Thank you. I will now ask a series of questions that were prepared by the League of Women Voters of Winchester with extensive input from the public. The questioning will end at 7:55 to allow for closing statements, even if not all questions have been asked. Am I getting feedback here? Oh, is that better? Okay. First question will start with Ms. Bolognesi. And the question is, and by the way, at any time if you need me to repeat the questions, don't hesitate. As a member of the school committee, what initiatives will you propose or support to improve the social, emotional, and physical health of our students? You have 90 seconds.
Thank you. So the school committee absolutely can support social, emotional, and physical health of our students over the long term. We track data from the Youth Risk Behavior Survey on a biannual basis to inform recommendations on social, emotional learning and physical health and how best to direct our investments in each of these areas. Our lever on the school committee here in this area is mainly budgetary. So over the years, we've invested in staff to help support our students, such as with a social emotional learning coach at McCall, or an adjustment counselor at each of the elementary schools and school psychologists. We can do more, though. I believe that we can invest in a health and physical education director. We can support our staff in full implementation of the physical education and health standards from the state. And we have one SEL coach at the moment at McCall. That is a person who is it's just one for 1,100 students. At the high school, it's absolutely crucial to help students deal with stresses from school, college applications, etc. So we have a strong guidance counseling office, but only 2 adjustment counselors. So with the right investment and planning, as we're doing through the prioritization in Winchester 2030, our strategic plan, we can help support our students' social, emotional health and their physical health.
Thank you. Ms. Mindarji.
Thank you. So I agree with Karen. There has been a lot of good work in dedicating resources to the buildings for SEL. However, there is one issue that I feel like we can leverage those resources better, and that's the transition between the different schools, the transition between the elementary schools to middle and then middle to high. I feel like those resources can be utilized even better right now to help those children in between those critical transitions. Also, at the high school especially, I believe that we can do a better job of giving our children an opportunity to express themselves and to advocate for themselves using these resources as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Nixon.
Thank you for the question. So I would second everything that my colleague Karen said with respect to the budget, but I would also suggest I think it's so helpful for us to the extent we can, solicit and hear from actually students on this issue. I don't know how many of you watch the school committee meetings regularly. You may know we have a high school rep. In the past few years, we've actually split that. So we have 2 students from Winchester High School. They regularly come to the table. I always enjoy it when they join us. We have some very candid conversations. And, you know, a few years ago, it was about, well, this team is playing and this team is playing and there's an art fair at the school, and that's helpful to hear. But I would suggest we've had some really meaningful conversations with our student reps about how they're feeling. And I'm happy to also point that some of those conversations have really actually influenced the school committee. We have conversations around this time every year about our schedule of courses. The school committee has lengthy debates. Should we add Mandarin? Should we not? Should we offer Mandarin 1 for freshmen? Should we expand this curriculum? We've had students tell us what they think about our course offerings and actually who they talk to. They talk to their peers. They want to know, what are the teachers like at the high school? They want to know what their peers' experiences have been. But I would also say that 3 years ago, we got a question, which was, how can we ensure that girls and women feel safe? I really thought about that. I reached out to some students, and I was horrified to learn we had no period products or dispensers at the high school. So I went straight to the superintendent. We resolved it with funding, and they're there today. And I appreciate students felt comfortable letting us know about that.
Thank you. Okay, next question will be starting with Ms. Minarji. As a member of the school committee, what initiatives will you propose or support to ensure that a broad cross-section of educators has input on matters of curriculum development?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. This is an excellent question. I was on the elementary literacy team, and one of the key findings was, and I encourage everyone in this room to read this study, between pages 65 and 75 was the talk of climate, the environment in which teachers are operating. And in it, there was a call for more open dialogue, more transparency, more of a feedback loop. And that is absolutely critical. And I believe that having more transparency through office hours and providing opportunities for teachers to reach out to members of the committee to voice their concerns. Right now, the school committee format of public comment is not conducive to all forms of communication. Many people are not comfortable with that format, and historically, office hours have been provided by the school committee. I believe they went away during COVID, but I think it's time that we brought it back to address this most important issue. So everyone has their homework assignment to go back and read that elementary literacy study. And please, if you only have time for 10 pages, please look at pages 65 to 75. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Nixon.
Could you just repeat the question, Margaret?
Yes. As a member of the school committee, what initiatives will you propose or support to ensure that a broad cross-section of educators has input on matters of curriculum development?
Thank you. So one of the unique things about being on a school committee is we have lanes that we're supposed to be in, and we have lanes that we're not. And both the magic and the frustration of being in this role is that gray area. There's naturally gray. I appreciate Stephanie citing the CES survey. One of the things that was so telling to me is teachers sort of broadly said, we understand that we have autonomy, we understand that our opinion matters, but we're not sure as a practical matter that it does. We're not sure that we're being heard. I've had the opportunity to speak with leadership of the WEA this year. There's a feeling like there's some camaraderie, understanding and respect at the building level, but where we seem to perhaps be falling down is at the administrative level. I'm not convinced that's deliberate. There may be some innocent explanations for it, but frankly, perception is reality. If the WEA is disappointed about culture, professional development, and communication, we need to fix it. Back to the comment about lanes, the school committee doesn't engage directly with teachers, but I think if we look at our collective bargaining agreement in Article 30, which allows us to create some, if you will, joint labor management committees. There's a process where the committee can become more familiar and close to the issues at hand and also get good advice from the union members and the superintendent. Lastly, at a public comment recently, a resident said they thought we needed a culture consultant, and I replied to them later by email, I think we have one, and he's sitting in the superintendent's office. It takes time to change a culture, but I think it's underway.
Thank you. Ms. Bolognesi.
Thank you very much, and I appreciated Ms. Mignardi's comments on the literacy study. I will also refer to that. So I had supported the school committee's funding of this literacy study and also the superintendent's formation of a third, or the superintendent's engagement of a third-party researcher to help the district understand better the experience of our students and our staff and community, all of the families with literacy, with elementary literacy in the district. The results of that survey showed that the teachers felt disconnected from the process, not respected, or lacking consistent messaging from on literacy from the district. So in response to that, Dr. Hackett established the elementary literacy team, which puts teachers at the center of this process to make recommendations on early literacy, including curriculum, assessment, professional development, etc. So I think it's important to give our teachers a voice in this very important process. And this team is now narrowing down options, excuse me, for piloting curricula in 2025-26. They'll then evaluate those pilots and make a recommendation to the school committee. So I anticipate there could be more than one curriculum because students learn in different ways and teachers recognize that. So.
Thank you. The next question will be starting with Mr. Nixon. What fiscal trade-offs do you think are necessary as we go into the coming year with a projected school budget deficit?
With a projected school budget deficit, well, I guess first and foremost, the school committee is going to be voting on a recommended budget on March 20th. The budget that we voted a few weeks ago was a level services budget, 5.84% increase. It's around $3.8 million. And I think the committee and the superintendent were clear, that's not the budget we intend to bring to town meeting. We've changed the process this year. What we wanted to say to the community was, if we were to do next year what we're doing today, and by the way, we're not just taking the number and adding an escalation factor. There's a lot of work that goes into that, looking at the needs of every kid next year. It's going to take a 5.84% increase. Once the community understands that, then we need to layer on top important conversations about what other investments do we need, back to that previous question. If we're going to make investments in a new literacy curriculum or math curriculum, these are six-figure investments. We need to be very clear in making that case and build support for it. But Margaret, I wouldn't say that's necessarily a budget deficit. I think we're going to do our job. We're going to vote the number. We're going to tell town meeting what we need. We are sitting on a pile of free cash, but that is not sustainable for future years. If we need to use free cash to get us over the hump in FY26 or 27, I think we need to do it. But I would absolutely look to partner with the State of the Town Committee so that we can find some sustainable revenue models moving forward. An override needs to be part of the solution, but it doesn't need to be the only solution. I really appreciate comments made around new growth at this table last night.
Thank you. Ms. Bolognesi?
Could you repeat that question?
Sure. What fiscal trade-offs do you think are necessary as we go into the coming year with a projected school budget deficit?
So, as Mr. Nixon had said, the budget subcommittee of and the superintendent have been working on the preliminary level services budget for the school committee. That was voted at the end of January for $3.9 million or 5.87% increase, and it didn't include the program improvements from the superintendent. So we've taken the time with the community to get feedback from faculty and from community members, all the stakeholders, on what they think, and the high school student council, on what they think the priorities should be for the schools. And the superintendent will develop recommendations from these. So we'll vote that final recommended budget in March and plan carefully on those long-term investments. It's important to communicate about the recommendations and the importance of these investments in our district. And we cannot vote at town meeting. The town meeting does not vote or specific line items. It will be a whole budget. So we'll have to take a look as a school committee very carefully at the needs at the priorities, depending on how the vote at town meeting goes. So, and as Mr. Nixon said, we do have free cash, and we can consider with the town as a whole an override, possibly. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Vinyarji?
The town does have free cash, but we need a more sustainable funding model. If you look at the way Winchester performs in any academic metric, we are above average when compared to the state of Massachusetts in all except for one, and that is per pupil expenditure. So you're probably thinking, wow, what a great deal, right? We're paying less than the average, and yet we're performing above average. Well, as an economist, I'm required to tell you that there's no such thing as a free lunch. Someone else is footing the bill. And here in Winchester, it's parents and parent associations, WIFI, and various organizations that are bolstering up our schools. Right now, the budget that is presented really is a bare bones budget. Right now, the school committee is faced with talking to the finance committee and the select board to find a way to make it work with our current finances. However, we need to think more broadly, because as inequities grow within our town, the way we're filling in the cracks right now is not sustainable. Thank you.
May I have a rebuttal, Margaret?
Yes, you have 30 seconds.
Thank you. I just want to make the point, in 2019, Winchester voters came to the polls and strongly supported an operating override of $10 million. There was money in there for capital as well. That didn't happen overnight. School committee, finance committee, planning board, select board, management, the superintendent worked for nearly a year in making the case, and then the select board had healthy discussion on what level of funding would be necessary. That override, we said, would last 2 to 3 years. And the reason we haven't had to have another one was because of COVID, our drastic cut in spending because of a pandemic, and the piles of money that came from the feds, and now it's time to talk about it again.
Okay. Ms. Bolognesi, Ms. Vinyarji, do you want to have a rebuttal also?
I agree that we need to think about the amount and timing of overrides. I think an operating override would likely be in 7 figures and needs at least a year to plan and communicate effectively to the town. I remember that 2018 override. We worked I remember that that select board and all the school and all the officials have worked very carefully and closely to come up with the benefits to the municipal side and the school side, and communicated those over and over to the community.
Thank you. Ms. Vinyarji?
Yes, thank you. Our current literacy curriculum is in a critical state. We need to act fast. Once the ELT has determined what path that should be, we need to be ready with the funds to mobilize and move quickly. To prepare for this debate, I watched previous debates, and in the 2022 debate, the question of literacy came up. And at that debate, the kindergartners in 2022 are now 3rd graders, and there's still talk about literacy reform. We cannot let the finances hold back from updating this curriculum, and I appreciate and when I've spoken to various members of the finance committee and we explain that, they understand, and I feel like that communication is key to get the buy-in from all of the boards in our town.
Thank you. Okay, the next question will be starting with Ms. Bolognesi. What are your views on the status of our current literacy program and the changes being proposed? Where would you like to see it go in the future?
So I support the process that we've followed these last 14 months. The initial awareness for me personally of literacy was during the pandemic, but our focus at that point was really on getting kids back in school safely. So this time around, the school committee and the superintendent have tackled this head on and set up a process to better understand the experience of students and staff and families with early literacy in our community. I had supported this funding of the literacy study. The results were difficult to hear, and it was difficult to hear about teachers' experience with literacy as well, and also of our students. But I do believe with putting the teachers at the center of this process and listening to the options that they have for piloting curriculum in 2025, 2026, that we can enact some change. And I anticipate that there could be more than one curriculum because students learn in different ways. Teachers have to have different strategies to address students' unique needs. And teachers, I think, have come to understand this process takes time, and we're committed to getting this right and making the right investment for students. So I fully support this direction, and someday I hope we are talking about how Winchester literacy sets the standard for other districts in the state.
Ms. Minyarji.
Can you please repeat the question?
Sure. What are your views on the status of our current literacy program and the changes being proposed? Where would you like to see it go in the future?
So the status of our literacy curriculum is in a critical state right now. I've already mentioned that. But even before the Boston Globe article and everything was fast-tracked, we knew that the literacy curriculum had to be updated. And while I was at Ambrose PTO, we've already started to mobilize resources to create a free after-school reading program. Because of the current critical state, you can look around. All of our friends were looking for private tutors, and they were even impossible to find, even at $150 an hour. So we created this free reading program, and it sold out in 3 minutes because that's the temperature and the sentiment around town about where our literacy curriculum stands. Now, there have been some key movements where now DIBELS and other assessor tools are available, but we're going forward, whatever the curriculum they should determine, and they cannot determine it soon enough, we need to focus on high quality PD for our teachers, as well as more in-class interventionists, and focusing all of our investments on the classroom experience and student-facing services. Thank you.
Mr. Nixon.
Thank you. So first of all, I want to agree with Stephanie. We knew 3 years ago that we had a problem. I was so grateful that Frank Hackett put his hat in the ring to come on board. He came on, for those of you who maybe don't remember, he came on board actually for a first year as an interim. The school committee had a lot of conversations with Dr. Hackett. He thought he knew what he was coming into. We're not a small district anymore, and there's a lot to learn. I was so thankful and appreciative when he said to the school committee that he wanted to stay. And in that year, I thought he did a fantastic job engaging with our grade level teams, our building-based teams, principals, teachers, to try to begin and understand what was going on. As I mentioned in an answer to a previous question, school committees don't choose specific curricula. Those are always going to come as a recommendation from the administration. And so I know the public was very frustrated when they heard Dr. Hackett say, and I don't know if it was 10 months ago or a year and a half ago, great questions from the community at public comment. Do you know what curriculum you're using in the classroom? There's a reason Dr. Hackett couldn't answer that, and it's because the curriculum that so many had been using, which is Units of Study from Lucy Calkins, has been widely panned nationwide. She's been excommunicated from Columbia Teachers College, but because our teachers are smart and they do have some autonomy, they began to use some other tools. But remember, that wasn't clear that they had the voice to communicate that back or get support. So I'm so pleased that we're at the place we are now, where if we're implementing things in the classroom that are working, we want to hear from it, but we need to let the literacy study run its course and hear a recommendation from the superintendent.
Thank you. Next question will be starting with Ms. Minyarji. What system of grading do you advocate to measure student proficiency and provide each student feedback about their progress?
So in the middle school, there's currently in the 6th grade, basically a system that's a continuity of the system that we have in our elementary schools. The feedback that I'm hearing from parents, and I don't have a middle schooler, and I'm not a teacher, but I am an economist, so I collect data points. And the feedback that I'm hearing is that that continuity, while it is intended to relieve stress to help them with that transition to middle, effectively when they enter 7th grade and they're finally hit with the ABCD scale, they didn't realize, oh, I'm not an A student, I'm actually a C student. And that is very upsetting to some children because they haven't had that feedback so far into their formal schooling life. So I believe that perhaps going back to the system that we all know and well, even my 4th grader, though he's in elementary school, he has the same grading standard that, where you can get an M, which meets the standards. That's the highest level. But in his class, they still call it an A. So it's a grading level that everyone is universal, and I think that we should continue it as well in middle school.
Thank you. Mr. Nixon.
Margaret, can you just repeat that one more time?
What system of grading do you advocate to measure student proficiency and provide each student feedback about their progress?
Thank you. So I suppose I'll piggyback on what Stephanie was saying. I think it appropriately can vary from elementary to middle school to high school. Those who have been following the school committee closely know that this year we had a strong request from high school parent community to revisit our GPA scale as it applies to letter grades. And we did that. We made a change. It was a scale that had been in place since, well, I'll say it because she said it publicly, Anna Paradise is our Dean of Students, and that's what we were using when she was in high school. It's the same scale I was using as a Texas public school student. I'm going to use this just as an example. Districts around us made changes with respect to GPA scale. We apparently didn't care to look or notice or think that it was important, but what we, I think, missed was the consequence of our students being competitive through the college application process or scholarship process, competing against their peers. So while that's really more about assigning credit on an academic scale, I would say I think we're going in the right direction, emphasizing performance-based assessments. What I most care about is our students learning, and can we be confident that they are learning? Do our students know that they're learning? I want our students to come to school looking forward to the day. I want them to leave school confident in what they've learned. And how we represent it, I have to be candid with you, it's less important to me. I'm interested in our students' self-esteem.
Thank you. Ms. Bolognesi.
Thank you very much. So as Ms. Minyarji was saying, standards-based grading at the 6th grade was implemented partly, I think, to mitigate stress from that transition from elementary to middle school. But there is a certain amount of stress that comes from not really understanding what an M for meets or needs improvement or the different grading of standards-based grading. I think the important part of that system was for teachers to be able to provide feedback to students, like deep, more in-depth feedback to students. But I think that the feedback, because we do have larger classes at the middle school, is hard to give and hard to give in any detail to students. So what I do believe is important, Mr. Nixon had alluded to this, are the performance-based assessments. This is an opportunity for students to express and show their competency and mastery of different skills, but in not just with paper tests, but also through presentations, building a website, other ways, so that they can show how they've mastered the material in real world, or from a real world perspective. And I'd encourage you to listen to our December 12th meeting and some of the meetings from the end of last year, because you could see examples of our students talking about inquiry-based science or presenting their English language portfolios, and it was quite stunning to hear what they've gotten out of the curriculum.
Thank you. Next question will be starting with Mr. Nixon. What will you, as a member of the school committee, do to promote accessibility and quality of special education?
Accessibility and quality of special education. So a subject that's certainly near and dear to my heart. I had a child on an IEP in this district for many years. Sort of sometimes difficult to talk about. We think about talking about our kids in a public frame, so forgive me. I'm very appreciative of all the services that my child got. And I think most families are, but there's always room for improvement. And I know they are because I hear from families that wish there were room for improvement. I suppose I would say, how do we sort of improve from where we are today? I might look at the models that we've put in place, again, with the support of other town boards and committees that perhaps could be expanded. So I think, first of all, of our specialized learning centers. When I first came on the school committee, we had one specialized learning center. It was very small. And we saw, back to the literacy frame, more and more students were struggling at the elementary level with reading and comprehension. And so we decided that we would develop a language-based learning disability specialized learning center at the Vincent Owens School. These kids had been going to private schools outside the district. Their families wanted them to be in district. These kids wanted to be in district. But it took an agreement with the finance committee to come to the floor of town meeting with us. We got the money. We said, if you build it, they will come. The chair is sitting in the back row right now, so that's why she's smiling. But I have noted her support on that, and I always will. We built it, and they came. It was very successful.
Thank you. Ms. Bolognesi.
So as I had said earlier, I believe that every child brings different needs and skills to their experience in the classroom, including in special education. So I support interventions to help identify kids early on and making sure that this is a robust process. On our feedback from the community and also from staff on the recent thought exchange for going towards what should be the priorities in next year's budget, both staff and parents and families had given the feedback that we need to increase our resources to be able to help out, to be able to support our students in the classroom, and to be able to identify their particular needs earlier in their education. So I think it's important for school committee to invest in this and to support this as part of the multi-year planning for the district. So, and just going back to the original point, I think it's important to make sure that we enable every student to be able to follow their passions and support their needs.
Thank you. Ms. Minjarji.
Can you please repeat the question?
Yes. What will you, as a member of the school committee, do to promote accessibility and quality of special education?
Investment. We need to invest more in our special education programs. They are understaffed. Children have increasing demands for early intervention services. Diagnoses of ADHD and ASD are creating a higher demand for these services. Right now, oftentimes we're asked the question, well, enrollment is down, but my costs are going up. And part of that explanation are special education services. And even still, we need to invest more. Oftentimes, there are tier 2 children that are needing additional support in the classroom or through pull-out services, and they're not being met because there are insufficient staff and funding. Thank you.
Can I make a brief rebuttal, Margaret?
Yes.
Thank you. So while uncertainty is never good for Wall Street or corporate America, it's not good for public school districts either. I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that the Secretary of Education that was recently sworn in by the Senate, as I understand it, has a goal of winding down the Federal Department of Education to the point that she no longer has a job. This really concerns me, but I mention uncertainty. Who knows if that's going to happen, when that's going to happen, and what the impact would be. But I am really concerned, Margaret, when you ask specifically about special education. We should recognize federal funds support special education.
Thank you. Ms. Bolognesi, would you like to rebut?
I suppose my further comment would just be related to what you were just saying, Mr. Nixon, is one of the challenges within the school district is the unpredictability of out-of-district tuition costs. And 1 year or 2 years ago, our out-of-district costs went up by 14%, and last year they were also up. This year they're projected to be at 3.67%. But it's something that we have to be able to, that it is part of our budget. It becomes part of our budget, and it's a real challenge to deal with each year.
Thank you. Ms. Minardi?
Yes, thank you. So right now, there's a Chapter 70 formula that takes into account our English learners, our English language learners, our ELL students. That number is increasing in our town, and I'm curious if that would be able to impact our Chapter 70 funding that's coming from the state. If that formula, right now we're getting the bare minimum, which is 18%, and I'm curious how that formula will be impacted and will better support our special education services.
Thank you. Okay, the next question will be starting with Ms. Bolognesi. Do you support a policy of phone-free schools from bell to bell with a goal of minimizing conflict between students and enhancing concentration and test scores?
Could you repeat the middle part of that question?
I'll repeat the whole thing.
Yeah.
Do you support a policy of phone-free schools from bell to bell with a goal of minimizing conflict between students and enhancing concentration and test scores?
So I think schools can partner with families on the use of cell phones. I've listened closely to this discussion on cell phones at parent associations, the Coalition for Safer Community, and also as chair of policy subcommittee. From a policy subcommittee view, policy really needs to come from the staff and principals if they see a need and can get behind it. So at middle school, there actually is a policy, phones stay in backpacks during the day. At high school, as this is developmentally appropriate, teachers decide on whether to allow them in class or put them away. At the elementary school, there was an informal rule on keeping phones in backpacks, but that didn't account for smart watches. And our staff realized that the practice was inconsistent across schools and worked to develop the same practice across the schools. Basically, cell phones have to stay in backpacks, and smartwatches must be set to school mode. I think it would be difficult to make our teachers have to police this every single day. But I think the point is, this policy is already in place for this year, and it will become part of the student handbooks formally when it comes to school committee in the spring.
Thank you. Ms. Minardi.
Thank you. The data is out there supporting this initiative. We are not pioneering anything. There are phone-free districts out there that are reporting positive outcomes for their students. They're reporting extra focus, they're improved mental health. Florida, forgive me for saying that, is also involved in this initiative. Los Angeles, the second largest school district in our nation, has plenty of data points that are supporting phone-free schools. Yes, I support a phone-free experience for our children, and I want to expand that language to call it device-free, because soon we're going to have screens glued to our eyelashes and distracting us from reality. Technology is one of the biggest challenges facing education, and it's not just limited to personal devices. However, right now, making a phone-free experience for our students is really the greatest gift that we can give them. No protocol will be perfect, and the teachers and staff are already policing phones without a policy in place. Now, in the elementary schools, because I love data, I surveyed all of our 5 elementary schools, and 93% of parents agreed and approved of a phone-free, device-free experience for their students. I can't get 93% of people to agree the sky is blue. This is a powerful statistic. And as elementary families are rising up through middle and high school, we're hoping to normalize that behavior.
Thank you. Mr. Nixon.
Well, so you, as you framed the question, Margaret, we weren't saying ban the devices from schools, but from bell to bell. So there's some gray here that I sort of struggle with. So if students are allowed to bring the phone into the building, our students hopefully are getting there before the bell rings, or else they're tardy. Where do those phones go? They can be very tempting. I'd be remiss if I didn't let you know I've had a couple of conversations with my family's pediatrician about this. He feels strongly that we should ban it, certainly for kids of a certain age. The practice we have at McCall Middle School, to the point Ms. Bolognese mentioned, is difficult to me. Kids do have smartwatches. It can be very distracting. I'd like to see us try to think of a different policy at McCall Middle School to eliminate the distraction from electronic devices, and I'm opening to sort of broadening the restrictions there. What I do struggle with, though, at the high school level is we need to remember that our seniors are about to find themselves in college classrooms in September, where every student in the room is using their phone, interacting with the professor with the information that's on the wall, whether it's a phone or a tablet or a laptop. So we have to remember this is a pipeline. This is a pipeline. And I struggle with saying, for some of our upperclassmen, let's say at Winchester High School, you can't touch a phone bell to bell. I think some of our teachers at Winchester High School incorporate these devices in a very constructive way. And I would really love to hear from the teachers through the superintendent how we might be able to empower them, if there's some policies that the school committee might adopt that could be creative to help avoid the distractions.
Thank you.
I have a rebuttal.
Yes.
So with regard to technology use and broader use of devices, I do think, or learning about use of computers begins in third grade library, and it goes all the way through high school, and especially with the advent of AI. So kids learn about, in the early years, about what's a legitimate website, and our counselors are also advising on cyberbullying and being kind and respectful to all. In fifth grade, I think IT staff can advise on placing more controls on Chromebooks. But I think it's difficult because I think it's difficult in general to put a complete ban on some devices because our kids do need these skills for the workforce. And I think our schools can partner with families and on their use.
I have a rebuttal. Thank you very much. A couple of points. There are districts out there that do have a ban. And it's not saying ban technology from your life forever. It's just during your school time hours. Now, you can open up your laptop and all of your messages and Facebook and whatnot can be there. There are districts, Lexington is one of them, where they issue laptops to their students that have safeguards in place. So there are no messaging apps. There's no access to social media and these distracting tools. That would be an interesting exploration to do here in Winchester. We can partner with the parent associations. I hate to push this out on them, but it would be a good way to have them partner and provide more safe technologies for our students.
Thank you.
You have a brief rebuttal, Margaret?
I wish I had an hour for that.
We do need to
Have a rebuttal?
If you're having a rebuttal to the rebuttal. Yes, but then they all get a
Stephanie's
chance
comment.
too. Okay.
So very quickly, I'd love to have Lexington's tech budget so we could give all our students a laptop. And I
That's
don't
what
mean
I said
that
we're giving it to the
sarcastically.
parent
I
associations.
would love to have Lexington's budget. I just need to say there's another element in this. It's parents and it's how devices are used at home. Let's not fool ourselves. How many of us have kids who are up at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning? Parents can be so helpful at getting the devices out of the bedroom so kids actually get 8 hours of sleep a night. This is not just a school issue. It's how the kids are using their devices at home and in the middle of the night.
Can
Thank
I
you,
please
ma'am.
have a rebuttal? A rebuttal of the rebuttal for the rebuttal?
Ms. Bolognese, and then to you, Ms. Minardi. You want to say anything?
I had attended the Massachusetts Association of School Committees, had a seminar on bans of cell phones in schools, or not. And they talked about some districts that had banned cell phones, and they talked about some of the merits and cons and pros and cons. But then I think where they landed was that education is really important about devices and cell phones. So while I agree that they can be a source of distraction and that there needs to be controls at home, I think the important thing is really having education about the wise use of devices.
Thank you. And Ms. Minyarji?
So I'm part of a parent organization that is exploring phone-free schools, and we partnered with the Coalition for a Safer Community and Parents to put together a speaker series. And of all of the coalition events, and no offense to Dot Butler, I know she's not here, but I know she's going to watch, it was so well attended. It was wall-to-wall parents desperate for answers to how to address technology. It's not a school problem. It's not a household problem. The entire community has to band together to rise above these algorithms. That really is, it's Silicon Valley versus families right now. These are addictive products that we all have to work together as a community. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, this will be the last question before we go to closing statements. And we will be starting with Ms. Minyarji. How can we optimize the relative roles among the select board, the school committee, and the finance committee in developing the annual school budget?
Thank you. Communication, communication, communication. When I speak to members of the finance committee and I break down what an investment, an ideal investment in the literacy curriculum looks like, they are on board. When I break down what the thought process is between special education investment, they are on board. Communication is key. Documentation is key. And having a trusted partnership between select, finance, and school committee is the only way to make this functional. We need to have shared values and goals. And oftentimes it's asked, well, what are my performance metrics? It's not just MCAS, though it's imperfect. That's something that we do have and that is reliable. But now we have other metrics like teacher retention, classroom size. These are important measurements of how our school system is operating. And so long as these are communicated and we share the common goal saying that we want to optimize for the classroom experience, this is what it looks like with a very detailed plan, I feel like that would build trust and help with the budgeting process. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Nixon?
Can you just repeat that one more time, Morgan?
How can we optimize the relative roles among the select board, the school committee, and the finance committee in developing the annual school budget?
Thank you. Well, so with respect, I would say there's one person missing in that question, and that's the town manager, just so that everybody understands how a budget gets developed. So the school committee votes a budget. By the end of January, we happen to vote a level services budget, but shortly thereafter, we'll vote a budget that we would like to see on the floor of town meeting. But that's not the budget that town meeting sees. That's simply the expression of the school committee. That's what we say we feel we need next year and why. It's actually the finance committee that brings forward a budget on the yellow sheet to town meeting. But before that, the town manager, Beth Rudolph, actually produces a budget writ large for the whole town. So schools, fire, police, DPW. The town manager is in a tough spot because she needs to produce a budget that meets the expectations of the select board. And if that is a quote unquote balanced budget, that's very difficult right now given some of the increases voted by the schools. So the select board certainly is going to render an opinion on the floor of town meeting when votes come, but it really is school committee, it's town manager, and it's the finance committee. I will tell you, pre-COVID and pre-Zoom, I feel like the school committee and the finance committee mutually did a better job coming to each other's meetings, finishing each other's sentences. There were evenings I well remember where the entire school committee came to a FinCom meeting, and at least 6 or 7 members of FinCom would come to a school committee and stay until 10:30 or 11 o'clock at night. That's not happening anymore. And that disappoints me, but I think there are areas for improvement on both sides. I'd like to see more of FinCom at our meeting, and I'll make a pledge to show up at their meetings as well.
Thank you. Ms. Bolognesi.
So I definitely think that it is important to communicate across the boards and town management on budget development and our known fiscal challenges. I also think it's important that we have a 5-year strategic plan and an understanding of multi-year budgeting and investments for the district, and that is communicated and that goal is shared by every single board in town. So school committee is developing its 5-year plan and its investments. I think that so school committee has a budget subcommittee, and it has been meeting regularly since last fall to discuss the challenges that are specific to schools, including out-of-district costs, fees, enrollment, and state funding. This has been an open meeting that we have invited different boards and different boards to come to and just understand the challenges that schools face in developing their budget. So I guess I would encourage further participation in those meetings down the road. And then lastly, it is so important, as we've been saying, we need to communicate across the boards and with all of the different boards in town, but also most importantly with town meeting and town meeting members, because at the end of the day, it is town meeting that approves our budget. So I would advocate for communicating at every level that we possibly can.
Thank you. We will now go to the closing.
I'm sorry, can I just make one quick statement, a rebuttal? Are we running out of time?
Yes, we are running out of time. Thank you. We will ask questions for closing statements. You have 60 seconds each. We're going to reverse order from the opening statements. So we will start with Ms. Menardi.
Thank you. As a collaborative community leader, I'm passionate about our schools and committed to academic excellence in a supportive environment. Collaborative, analytical, and representative of elementary voices, I'm ready to contribute fresh ideas and real solutions to our schools to keep them best in class. I want to give a special shout out to our 4th and 5th graders joining on WinCam this evening. I see you and I appreciate your letters of support, and I agree, you should have more recess and better lunch options. Let's work on that. In closing, I'd like to say it is difficult for elementary age families to participate in local government. I wouldn't be here on stage if it weren't for the love and support of our community, especially my husband, Michael Gordon, and our 2 children, Isaac and Eva. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Bolognesi.
Thank you. I believe that Winchester Public Schools, as I've said before, should enable every child to reach their full potential, whatever their talents or needs. Our challenges will be to partner with the state on a new Morocco and to plan and invest wisely over the long term in our staffing and our program investments in literacy, math, and other departments. It's critical to listen to our stakeholders and bring a variety of perspectives to the school committee, and to set an example in our town for the kind of inclusion, collaboration, communication, and kindness that we're striving for in our schools. I'm proud to have served in this capacity during my time on school committee, and I look forward to your support and vote on Election Day. I hope to continue this work for our students, our educators, and the district. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Mr. Nixon.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Thank you to the League. Thank you to Jinx for hosting us tonight. I thought tonight I would just leave you with my own personal goals for the coming year if I'm elected in a couple of weeks. I want to unabashedly, with my colleagues, make the case for our district's true FY26 funding needs following our scheduled vote for the recommended budget on March 20th. I pledge to support our State of the Town's work towards a sustainable revenue model to meet the ongoing needs of our town and our district for the next few years. I look forward to the completion and the submission of the statement of interest to the MSBA for our new Morocco. I'd like to see us complete phase 2 of the district's 10-year facilities master plan. In collaboration with the superintendent, I'd like the school committee to address the WEA's concerns over culture, communication, and professional development. I look forward to constructively negotiating a fair successor collective bargaining agreement with the WEA. And lastly, even if it means I pull out the last of my hair, this year I would like us to secure the funding for Lincoln Elementary School's much needed improvements, including HVAC and the replacement of their crumbling infrastructure around the building. It would be an honor to serve Winchester.
Thank you.
For the next 3 years.
Thank you. And I think a round of applause for the candidates.
Great. Well, thank you so much to the school committee candidates for showing commitment to our community by running for public office and participating in our debate. And thank you, Margaret, for moderating the debate. On behalf of the League, I have a number of others I would like to thank. First of all, thank you to the members of the public who sent us so many great suggestions for the debate questions. Thank you again to the Cummings Foundation for generously supporting this event, and to the Jenks Center for collaborating with us on the use of this space. We thank WinCam for producing this event and remind you that it will be available later on WinCam On Demand. We thank the town clerk's office and the election workers for organizing a safe, orderly, and inclusive election. We acknowledge contributions by a number of league volunteers who help publicize, plan, and carry out this debate, as well as organize and publish the online candidate voter guides on our website. And mostly we want to thank you, the voters, for exercising your right to vote and having your voices heard. As a reminder, early voting will be held at Town Hall beginning on Saturday, March 15th, and will continue on Monday, March 17th through Friday, March 21st. Election Day voting will be held in the Winchester High School cafeteria on Saturday, March 22nd from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m.